So today we're going to be discussing the disease management in turfgrass. Please in the chat if you have questions or don't see anything where you're missing something, we'll be you can look at it. Okay, we're excited that spring is coming, and let's see if I can do. Okay, there you go. Spring's coming up. We see some green up already, and although the last week cold spell really kind of settles back a little bit, but really we're in full gear, and this is the time for many diseases to be, as I always said, prevention is the key. So springtime really just makes everything in there to get it going, really. And everything really in disease management, and I'm talking about disease not only in disease, Turfgrass disease, but in many different plants and animals and settings. The prevention is key. So in our case, everything that you're gonna do right now, I mean, you already, in some of you did some weed control, and you're doing some fertility and so on. That's environmental manipulations that we do. That's the key to avoid disease, because in many cases in disease, by the time we already see the symptom, it's already too late for that. So spring that spot. We are going to see it in a couple of weeks or so. Well, that should have been done something in the fall and so on. So again, that's important for that everything that we do. And that's why we have to take pride on what we do in just even the normal cutting procedures, the normal fertility aspects and things like that. So that was also very, very important. But it's maybe time, the landscape is changing and changes every year and so on, within a client and so on. So it may not be the right time now or the right place for Bermuda anymore. Trees on something, and or other aspects. If you manage centipede and you are down in middle Georgia or so, you're what talking about. So centipede has been having a horrible really green up, and so there are things that we need to really evaluate if that's what we need to do. And then there's always something before we do some fungicide management, because there is no matter how much fungicide we put in or others, if we don't really address that collecting water, that poor drainage in the soil, that of the fertility, then the disease is going to be there continuous. So really, I'm going to really hammer on the mastering the basics, knowledge of a particular area in that client. Every client has to be unique, and you have to kind of provide that at least. I mean, when you go to the doctor, you have a specific file and a specific what you've been having. The same thing with your clients in turf. Maybe that particular area has a area that is prone to disease or collects water, or is a vulnerable area, or more of disease, shade, things like that. Those are the things that you look for, and that's the one that requires more active monitoring. So and make the client feel like they are really special and on particular knowledge of that area. Soil fertility is key in disease prevention. If you have the first thing, if you haven't done a soil test, do a soil test. Maybe that's somebody that needs a particular, especially potassium levels. Potassium levels are very important for disease prevention. So those are the ones that we need to do and to evaluate, especially and combine with the pH in the soil. If you know that dollar spot is a nitrogen and potassium deficiency, rust. If you have rust in, especially zoysia grass, I already have a couple of samples with zoysia that has had rust you know, it's low nitrogen, a lot of humidity, and so on. So again, I cannot address more the importance of the soil fertility. That's very much the key. That based on also the social, the physical characteristics of the soil. If something, you know, have a clay soil and it's highly compacted, and you know that when it's uh, dry, it really makes like a rock and so on. But you know, in Georgia, there are many things that grow. So again, you have to see if there's any issues with compaction, with pH, with thatch buildup. You're cutting, and then that organic matter that stays there. That's an important aspect that we need to take care. Nutrient levels, physical characteristics. If it's too sandy, maybe put some organic matter. If it's too hard the soil, maybe you have to change a little bit with some core radiation and some sand, top dressing, things like that. So those are very important aspects. And regarding to disease in particular, the amount of water that it is, if you have moisture extremes, either a very saturated soil, flooding, standing water, things like that, that doesn't percolate well the water in that soil profile, something is going on. And especially in new clients that you don't really know how the installation of the turf was done, and see if it's doing some, you know, just laid on top of you know, hard soil and things like that, then those things are going to show up later, because they're going to accumulate water, or they're going to basically pretty much run off and things like that. The same thing happens when it's a deficiency or drought. You know, you have a lot of issues with that. So again, we have to have a proper amount of water, and we need to be a little bit more proactive in the irrigation and see, you know, if how there's the soil conditions and so on. So really need to poke a little bit and try to see what's in the first couple of inches in the soil. If you see that it's too wet or too dry, things like that, in order to adjust. Moist, well, you know, I just sent the guys to mow and so on, but actually this is one particular practice that is very important. So don't take it as a chore really, but something that a cultural practice that is going to enhance your disease prevention and also your reputation. A good cutting will talk about you, and also in disease prevention. The height of cut. Why the height of cut? Well, if you leave it too high, that is going to create a lot of moisture in the canopy, and that will do it some disease that is going to be there. So compaction frequency, sharpness of the blades. Again, we're cutting, we're doing an injuries. Therefore, we have some that are, you know, maybe penetrating into those open wounds and things like that. Compaction patterns, things like that. It's important. Pattern and compaction kind of go together. You know, we kind of have to see, and all that is because if you compact the soil, the roots is going to be not well developed. Water we're going to collect there. There is no oxygen in the root system, and so on, and therefore disease can ensue. So I go there. Is it the disease or not? And so one of those cats, and this, you know, those some are very unique, and you can say, well, this is it. But one thing is that you have in every county the county extension office in which that they can tell you or help you out to determine if it's a disease or not. But just as a general, what are the difference between a disease or something that is caused by the environment or not a abiotic factor? The abiotic factor happens quickly, or happens in like in here. I mean, there is no disease that happens in a straight line. So when something is going on, that's the issue. It may be that like in here, there's a root system that it's, you know, really highly compacted, and therefore all that blackening is just sulfides that have been accumulating in that. And don't feel bad, it's in my green that I took this picture. So that's something that it can happen. So sudden uniform, more than one host, that's not disease, or not, at least not a pathogenic disease. That's something that happens with the environment. Disease is not uniform, it's progressive, it's specific. It's only on Bermuda grass or only in the grass. And today I saw one patch or something. Next it will be 2, 3, or is growing and so on. So again, it's something that happens, and usually it's a random pattern on that. So you really have to be there and kind of be very observant of what happens. Mechanical injury, scalping, things like that. I just want to tell you, for example, that last summer, due to a scalping, and I lost Bermuda grass, a bentgrass green. That basically it's a $10,000 issue, and all because one of the reels, we have a reel mower that had 3 different sets of reels, and one of them was lower than the others, and basically just a scalp that, and it was in a very critical time back in June. So basically, and long story short, I lost, and I had to seed again the bentgrass green. So one of those things that if you're working on a golf course, you know what I mean when that happens. Soil compaction, again, that's obvious, something that is traffic. You may have to address some issues. Maybe the owner walks around the area. If you work for a park, so do a recreation, you kind of maybe have to direct the client somewhere else, things like that. If you're a field manager, you may have to intervene and say, okay, like got move the practice somewhere else or on the other side of the field, things like that. And there's a chemical control, and they are fungicides. Basically, 90% of the issues, or 80% of the issues that are in disease are fungus that produce a disease. Therefore, there's a lot of fungicides there, very effective, sometimes very expensive, but it's very important what pathogen I'm going to control. So if I don't know, please send us a sample to the county agent and see if this. And I'm saying that because it's important where is it? Am I attacking the pathogen? Because the fungicide that you apply to the canopy is not going to go through the plant and root systems, and the disease is located in the roots, is not going to do it. So all the fungicide go in the upper manner. So this is the plant, and it's going to go up. So if you deposit that fungicide too shallow or something, and the disease in the root system is not going to go, no matter how expensive or how good the fungicide is. And sometimes, as I said, it was before maybe a preventative. This is just an example. Preventative, I did an application of a product, 0.18 ounces, and the curative, this is before the disease. This is, you see the control, and this is no fungicide applied. And a curative, in which I did 3 times, this is when disease was going in there, 3 times 0.18. So this is 3 times more product, 3 times more, of course, the economic, and so on. So again, preventative. And as I said, we're going to go through some diseases that actually need application down in the fall. And that's the kind of the problem, or not the problem, the challenge that the turfgrass managers have to tell the client on disease. Hey, we're going to do application in October, and really a client is not going to see anything of what you did until March or April. So there are 4 or 5 months that see, wait, what did you do? So again, it kind of have to be a educational process too on what's actually going on. Cool season. Right now, if you're managing tall fescue, this is the time to do some preparing. And if you're managing Bermuda grass, social grass, NAP grass, and Agustin grass, this is the time in which it is more critical in order to have a good time during the summer. And this is, if you're managing tall fescue, bent grass, this is the time, if you're not going to, trying to pull your hair out, if you don't, do the prevention for cool season grasses. The same thing. So again, what I wanted to show here is that timing is everything, and spring and fall are very important for disease management control and or control for that. Foliar diseases. We're going to see a couple of foliar diseases that are actually going to be going on or are going on right now. Dollar spot. Everybody knows dollar spot is one if you're going to get it, but when you're going to get it. Now the different thing is that we have now went from one species of one fungus to 3 or 4 different species from this. I mean, just kind of separated. So we have new tools and so on. So we now know that bent grass isolates from Clariredia is the name of the dollar spot now. Yeah, still going to infect Bermuda grass, but in a less level than isolate from Bermuda grass and so on. If you have already dollar spot, is because the nighttime temperature. Remember, we just had some cold, really, or cool nighttime temperatures, which we still have. So and then warm days like we have basically today, and with a little humidity that we have going on, and the rain that is coming and so on, those are perfect conditions for dollar spot. So be looking for that in the next couple of days, really weeks. Low nitrogen, low potassium in lower fertility promotes the growth of the fungus. So am I going to get my out of the way by really addressing the fertility, but also by addressing some of the humidity. Humidity is very important. So remove all that extended moisture, remove dew in the morning if you can. Have the client to drag a hose around or poling or something, but at least that it doesn't irrigate early in, let's say in the morning, that extends that humidity. Maybe they have to prune a little bit on those bushes around and so on, and in order to increase air circulation, or mower recommended height and so on. And if the disease persists, do a chemical control. Maybe you can do one that it's already as a preventative application. And you can go to georgiaturf.com and have all the Georgia Pest Management Handbook, in which we have the 2021 all the fungicides that are labeled for dollar spot. And since this disease is very important, we have plenty of fungicides for that. I will concentrate on some like similarly, for example, that has thiophanate methyl, that has any of the azole. It is active ingredients, metconazole, for example, anything that propiconazole, anything that ends up in azole in a fungicide, it will be very efficacious against dollar spot. So again, there are many different things and that you can actually do, but one way to prevent it is to really get our the fertility up to par. We have the publications. You want to know more about dollar spot, you can do that. One thing that it's very important right now on Bermuda grass, if you are managing Bermuda grass, and sometimes you see like a little speckling around and some darkening and so on, no really pattern to it, and you look and there's no dollar spot. And if you look closer to the leaves, you see a lot of little black points there. That's a bipolaris leaf spot, and that it's really going on pretty much right now. The same characteristics in terms of humidity and temperatures than dollar spot, exclusively on Bermuda grass, not other species of grass really are susceptible. One thing that it promotes the infection, of course, is high humidity, but also low potassium levels. And this is almost even more so than dollar spot, that low potassium levels actually can promote bipolaris leaf spot. One thing that's different is that this disease produces what we call spores, where like small seeds in every little thing, lesion there on the leaves are capable of producing a lot of spores. Therefore, it will be going all out either by feed or equipment, water, the dog running around, things like that. And contrary to dollar spot, which do not form spores, it needs a little bit pieces of the grass to be transferred. So that's one thing. If you see this, again, address the low potassium levels and the high humidity. Phosphorus and potassium, water management, use lightweight equipment, and so on. But again, if you see an area and that is more, it has more than other area in the same part, maybe start mowing the part that it has no disease, and then that you can do that. So again, it's important for that. Sorry, I got distracted a little bit on letting people in. Fungicides also, because it's important. There's a bunch of products there, but anything that has anything that has a strobilurin, anything that the active ingredient ends up strobing, are not effective or very, very low on dollar spot, but they are really effective in everything else that I'm going to be talking about, including bipolaris leaf spot. So there are several ways to do that. We did several trials. We've been working with it for a long time. We have new products like 26GT, Exteris, Lexicon, Exemplar, Velista, and so on. I put this list, and maybe some that are only for golf courses, but you should several. I mean, we have. If you look at our pest recommendation handbook, you have a lot of products. But again, anything that has strobin will be very efficacious in it. Tiflostrobin, pyraclostrobin, this is Insignia. Tiflostrobin is Disarm by itself, and so on. But right here, it's important. Potassium levels, water management, and reducing stress, and thatch management. Remember, thatch management, all that organic matter is there, and it's going to harness all spores and things like that. Crown and sheath diseases. So we're going to go down into the soil profile. So, and one disease that is going on right now, if you have not seen it in some, you're going to see it pretty soon, especially if you are managing zoysia grass. We call it a large patch, or it's a disease produced by a fungus called Rhizoctonia. And it has a specific name, but the thing is that it actually happens March, April, and May. And in some cases, it can go through the whole year, especially when we have mild winters. But overall, on March, April, and May, kind of it not disappears, but it recedes the infection June, July, and August, and so on. But and you see all these large areas, which are basically yellowing, very thrifty. Eventually it kills the grass, but not all the grass is killed. There are some runners that are still there, and they are able to kind of grow later in the season. But what happens is, like you have in here in the top part, that it can collapse the whole area. And if you see this, and that scenario is going to take you a long time to go back to normal. So again, it's important, a prevention. caused by a fungus. If you have areas that have a shade, or collect water, things like that, that's when you start to, looking at it. This is an area that I have with social grass. In social grass is very kind of more damaging or more prominent. It attacks everything. It goes to Bermuda grass, social grass, centipede, and San Agustin grass. But it's more showy, for using a word in social grass, but it can devastate centipede grass or a San Agustin grass, kind of the same scenario. This attacks the crown area of the plant. It does not attack the root system, and that's an important distinction there, because at the crown level we can have thatch, water collection, things like that, so that we should be addressing. Very, very easy to detect under a microscope. So it is very important when you get maybe get a sample to the county agent and so on, and to kind of tell you if it's what is going on, and located in the crown level. There's some areas, again, this is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and basically there's a lot of shade that it's going to be problematic, and so on. Just kind of different things, different mayor. This is a little bit different than El Toro and things like that on social grass, but the symptoms either reddish to yellowing looking. What can we do? The first thing is, and if you see all these three, scout, avoid excessive nitrogen fertilization, especially early, and water management, water timely and deeply, avoid frequent light irrigation to reduce humidity. Is better to really irrigate heavy and one time than light and frequent. Allow time during the day to allow plant canopy to dry. So set that timer of the irrigation for night or very early in the morning and things like that. And also reducing thatch. Thatch is the organic matter that you see. Maybe is a time if you feel it too spongy or so on in that area, you may be that you need to collect the clippings and some something like that in order to avoid thatch buildup, or power rake or do something else to reduce that thatch, because that thatch is located where the Rhizoctonia is attacking. We have a lot of products that are actually very efficacious on Rhizoctonia. Again, the strobilurins such as isosixtrobin, Heritage, but some others too. And I just don't want to give you one or two. This basically is going to be based on how is your particular clientele and something like that. But we have a guidance for you in what to apply. But rather than the chemical, what I would like to point your attention to is the timing. Spring, early spring, before you see some symptoms, or fall, is the prevention a part that we need to take very important. So if you have had a history of large patch and you didn't do anything, so the best thing is to do is do something in the springtime, and even if the grass looks perfect, in the fall, go and do an application fungicide in order to avoid the following springtime. Anything that has thiophanate methyl, anything that has strobilurins, isosixtrobin, tiracostrobin, things like that, anything that has a azole, propiconazole, tebuconazole, things like that are very efficacious. Now, the key is where to put it and when. Where? At the crown level. And usually we do 2 gallons per 1,000 square feet of water for a normal foliar irrigation. For crown, maybe 3 gallons, 2 to 3 gallons per 1,000 square feet of water when you're depositing that, or when it's wet and kind of go into the down the canopy. And spring or fall. That's and fall being the most important, and in a preventative way. We usually do it here in Georgia and here in Griffin about the first week in October for that, or right here about right now. I mean, early April when we have probably about 40% or so of green up is when the time that we should hit it. I don't see any questions yet. I see, but can get the chat and do. We have some, this is on my trial that I did, and basically have some aspects. Now there's a new group of products that maybe you're gonna start looking at it, and that's we call it the SDHIs, which basically, new product, anything that has like pyroxide, flucropyroxide, pentylpyroxide, things like that are the new group of fungicide that are now very efficacious on controlling many diseases, in this case, Rhizoctonia. And we've seen that that if you put a fungicide in the spring and in combination with some fertility, then you will be a little bit you will be shortening the symptoms, in our case, until that we did the trials up to 6 or so weeks. So that's a good thing. We have information for you. Now, the same thing on, let's say you're managing tall fescue, you're in the upper part of the state, or from north of Atlanta north. There's a lot of tall fescue yards and things like that. Or if you're a golf course superintendent and managing bentgrass, this is the time in that you have to be prepared. Or right here in 1 month or so, late May, early June, because there's the same brown patch in tall fescue is a cousin of the one that we just saw, which is Rhizoctonia. The same as you see, the same fungus, but a little bit different in that they are very closely related. But this one goes to cool season grasses, and we see it here in Georgia late May, early June, and July, and sometimes in August. So this is the time to be preparing for, if you have a yard with or a client with tall fescue or bentgrass. Now, in this one, you're actually going to see some lesions. That's what I've kind of failed to mention. In large patch, you don't really see anything on the leaves. You only see the yellowing. And whenever you see a symptom that starts in the tip and goes down, the yellowing, something is happening at the crown level or the root system. So you have to be, get the whole plant. In large patch that we saw just a few minutes ago, you don't see anything. You just see the yellowing. In tall fescue, infected with Rhizoctonia, and it's called brown patch, we see a lot of lesions that is easy to see than the others. So, but again, it starts as a morning shading tree. For example, if you have any area that has some shade and is about June, early June or so on, you start seeing all these patches. It can be very large too. Very similar to the previous one. I failed to put a little more symptoms, but you will see patches or that are 4, 5, 6 or more feet in diameter. The same thing that happened with large patch, in which it really doesn't really kill or makes a total destruction, but really thins it out and eventually will kill it. What can we do about it? And we have to do it really here in the end of May, early March, maintaining a proper height. Remember, tall fescue is one that requires a little bit higher mowing height, probably between 2 and 3 inches. Avoid any nitrogen between mid-May from now or maybe, early May, mid-May to September, no nitrogen. That will just create more growth and disease. Decrease any shade or increase any circulation. I mean, that's the whole situation. For example, to control brown patch and pythium in golf courses. Now, really, we cannot grow without, we cannot grow bent grass, a cool season grass like tall fescue, without a fan, a big fan in the green, and that is blowing all that air, because we need to increase air circulation. So that's what we need to do. Maybe we have to prune those bushes around the area, things like that. And so basically those two is fertility and manage with and irrigation or humidity management. There are a few that kind of cultivars that have a little more resistance, but really here in Georgia, even the more resistance that we have, if you know, we have such severe heat, and sometimes we want to cool it or whatever, and basically what we're doing is just putting some more water, and that basically it's the perfect storm. Same thing, same products than the one that we saw in large patch. There's a lot of fungicides. I think the critical point here is the preventative application. So you really want to go ahead of the disease. And this case will be early May. This is wrong here. It's late May, early June. That is the one that we need to do. So here in about 2-3 weeks, we need to go. If you are managing tall fescue, you should be and want to go in a preventative way against brown patch. And if you had brown patch in the past and you were diagnosed with that particular client, you should go, no questions asked, for something that is a preventative application. So just a fescue lawn treated with Heritage Banner and Heritage again, or Heritage Banner. That's azoxystrobin and propiconazole at the 5-week interval, and it gets a pretty good control of brown patch. Root diseases. Here we have some that we're going to be discussing. One that it's more and more prevalent, and if you are in the mid Georgia or South Georgia, and somebody, I have a client that is growing San Agustin, that's usually they kind of go together. And remember, well, let me just go for a minute here, but that's a real root disease. So look at the root system. You start with a yellowing in some areas and so on, and then kind of goes and really gets into destroying. And because it's a root infection, it will really collapse. It's not like the patch that we saw with large patch, in which some of the runners are still growing and so on. This one is going to be dead. And like in this area, I mean, this one is, they are weeds, not grass. So again, eventually this area is going to get destroyed. But look at the root system and see that there are dark roots, yellowing, thinning, necrotic areas, things like that. And when I say rotten the root system and things like that, it's very kind of telling what's going on. This is why it's important to be familiar with your county agent and be friends with it, because if you take a sample, this fungus produces very specific little structures in the that you can actually see very easily on a dissecting scope. So nothing really will actually take is that you take it, he sees or she sees that, and right there, nothing produces this kind of destruction but Gammanomyces, which is the causal agent of take call, and some others like spring death spot and things like that. Very, very dark stolons and roots. And see, I mean, this is what it looks, and there's only yellowing on the top, and so on. Now, take all or Bermuda grass decline and things like we call it Bermuda grass decline because it was take all first found in Bermuda grass, but now we call it a take all. It's a stress disease, meaning that if you have been diagnosed or you take the sample, say, oh, it's take all, this thing has been there for a couple of years or is progressively getting worse. So the first thing that you need to see, what is causing the stress? Or is this too wet, too dry? Is it too soil very hard or very low fertility? Things like that. That's the thing that you have to address. The disease is more aggressive in higher pHs in the soil, like for example, above 6.4 or so, like we have in South Georgia. You're going to have that because it's one more factor that the fungus is taking care, the advantage of. We really need to implement. If you say, okay, we need to implement some issues with, fungicide, see what a soil test, if they, can I be eliminating things, if it's either very low on something or whatever, then we need to address that because that's what happens. So take all something that happened and is going constantly worse due to something in the soil and the water and so on, and we can take care of it by addressing that stressor and by some fungicides. Again, early fall, during the fall or early springtime, it's one of the best timing to do that. We have all the information that you want in take all root rot, and you can type this in the search engine, and basically takes you to that particular, and we discussed that in a lot of detail. And finally, I just wanted to get one which is basically, I don't know how to call it. It's a disease, but really is something that is not infecting the plant. And that's fatty ring. Fatty ring is being produced by more than 50 type of fungi or mushrooms in many cases. And the key is that there are several fungi and therefore several symptoms. Ones that, for example, is going to increase the greening. One that is going to, and this is the most familiar that we see, there is nothing around in that part, basically just like a big ring. And some that you just see the basidiocarps or the mushrooms there. So there are three types: one that kills, one that overgrows, and one that just basically produces the mushroom cap. If you have fatty ring, that means that it's associated with high organic matter. These fungi were there trying to destroy wood and things like that. If you have a new subdivision, if you new client where trees were cut, it may be that you will find some of this there and so on. So the first thing to address is the organic matter that you actually seen there. Now, this is important. It's really actually not a disease that attacks the plant, but it's a mycelium or something that makes it very hydrophobic. So the grass above ground, this is a cut that is kind of longitudinal to the ring, transversal, excuse me, to the ring, in which you see the mycelium. That's the way that the fungus grows. Is going to be basically very hydrophobic, so no water, no other nutrients, things like that are there. So therefore, that's why it's dying. So in this one, what this is important is because we have to address either by fungicide, by co-radiation, but by something trying to destroy this mycelium. So maybe more water, things like that. So that's but it actually does not penetrate or doesn't infect the plant. So again, water heavily, use something that, you know, breaks the fungus by aerating and so on. We have some issues with, or some fungicides, but the fungicides really need to be put it down into the root system. Sometimes, you know, if it's only one or two, you can actually kind of wet well with a fungicide there, and the area and so on. And so that's one thing to look for. And so that's important. I guess we have still some 10 minutes. Brian, are you there? Should we see if we have some questions, or I can go for another 5 minutes?
Yeah, I'm here. Let's leave some time for some questions. I know we've got one in the chat box, and I've got another one that was sent to me here. So
okay,
hit nematodes real quick, and then we'll move on.
I'll open it for questions here. I mean, I know you can have some again some questions. Just and I guess you can now open your microphone and shoot the question, or you can.
Yeah, we're gonna put them in the chat box, so that way we don't get background noise and things like that. So let's get this one real quick that was submitted by Bill that was sent out to everybody. And thanks, Bill, for the question. So you can see his question there is: large patch in zoysia. How do you get the best recovery after disease has been identified? He's concerned about being too much nitrogen, trying to help it recover. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's very. Bill is right on the money. You are not, if you have that disease and you have you know, you took the sample, say, okay, I got diagnosed with large patch. Really, you are not going to get your get out of the way by basically just applying nitrogen, urea, or that. I mean, you need really to address other. But one thing that is telling you there is that it somehow has high humidity in the area, either in the canopy or in the root system, and also that somehow potassium levels are low, and really you need to go with a fungicide, and either in a curative way in the springtime, but more importantly, go in the fall, October or something, depending where you are, and try and do a preventive application with a fungicide. Because if you're going to try to manage it just by adding too much or, you know, kind of getting your fertility way out of the way, you know, I mean, you know, force it, that's not going to do it by itself. So you're right. Don't get, you know, the fertility is not going to get you out of the way, and especially if you just get in, you know, nitrogen basis only.
All right.
One thing yeah,
I have one more here. Try to simplify it. It says, you know, there's where you've done a great job of showcasing the challenges that are out there and that everyone's trying to deal with. And when you're working with customers, maybe those that are especially new to having turf management, you know, maybe fertilizer and weed control primarily, is how do you best communicate the expectations? You had talked about preventative versus curative, which is, I think, very important in discussion. But do you have a recommendation of how we can communicate to customers, whether they're homeowners or whether they're board members for a golf course community or a park that we can?
Yeah, that's a very important question in regards, you know, especially when we're dealing with customers. One thing is to explain and to communicate very well and efficiently and forcefully, really, that disease is very different from weeds and some others. You know, you kill a weed and you are the best landscaper, but And I think right now is a perfect time to talk about prevention. I mean, we all been, stuck for a year in many different in which prevention is key for any disease. So again, look, we're gonna do something that is gonna not you're not gonna see anything until springtime, 4 months later, 5 months later. But if we don't do it, then it's gonna cost you the long run more money and more time to recover if we do it. So again, put it in terms of money and in terms of prevention and in terms of examples. It you know I always say, if you're taking cholesterol pills, well, you're going to be completely taking pills, but if you don't correct the amount of cholesterol you take, and if you still going to the burgers and tacos and things like that, again, that's something that you need to address. So again, prevention and money. If you don't do it, then later on it's going to cost you. Um, and it's like an animal disease, human disease, or a plant disease. The longer you wait, the worse you are just putting the odds against you.
Yep.
And then
Okay.
it take you longer time.
All right. Well, do you see any other questions that popped up in the chat? I'm not seeing anything.
Well, this says, after ID treated with a fungicide, have you stopped the disease? What do you suggest to help social recovery in a most effective manner? So you treated with a fungicide, you stop the disease. Now, I think what it needs to do is, okay, I got it. Good fertility. So again, and not only based on nitrogen, but in all those. Maybe, and I'm a good proponent of a core radiation. I mean, anything that thatch, that water management is very, very important. So again, client or you, irrigation when it needs to be, maybe poking holes for me is one of the best, and big proponent of doing that as a normal part, cultural practice that you can offer to the client. Taking that thatch out, large patch is attacks the crown level, and that's how you do it. A good cutting, and so on. So again, I think just implementing the cultural practice that we talked in that very first slide, that will be very, very important. And now that you have it, go, even if the grass looks beautiful, go in the fall, because now you know that you have a history, so you go preventative.
All right, well, very good. Well, we are right on time, so we thank everyone for joining today. You can email the UAC office and with any questions or follow up that you might have as you kind of run into this information you receive today, and you get into a job site and questions pop up. You can just email us at office@georgiauac.com. Of course, you can also use the old Google machine and come up with an email address for Dr. Martinez. I know he'd be happy to respond to you as well.
That's one other thing that, we are here to help you all, guys. We have a whole system and extension and things like that. We are now on email or text away. Nobody calls really now, just text people, but we're here to help you out. And if we can do that in any way, please don't be bashful. Just hit us with an email, call, or email.
Yeah, that's great. Well, hey, and this is about continuing education. So for those of y'all that are out there, visiting with your cohorts, and whether it's in your own company or other allies in the industry, let them know about these sessions. I mean, you get continuing education hour by participating, and plus it's a great advantage of being a member of the Urban Ag Council just for that connectivity. So we're proud to have you as a member. We want to make sure you use all the resources that are out there. So please take advantage of that and use this as a resource. We will put this video, will be posted online. on the UAC website that you can see the addresses there on the screen. And we'll have that up for you by the end of the week for sure. But yeah, and don't forget, next Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel for those that are old enough to know what I'm talking about. We'll be back at 11:30 for another seminar, and we have them for the next 3 weeks. So keep dialing in and participating and sending us those questions, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that you're getting the education that you're seeking from the organization that's got your best interest in mind, the Georgia Urban Ag Council. So thanks so much. Thank you, Dr. Martinez, for your time. Great to see you, my friend, and we'll look forward to connecting in person sometime soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you guys for chiming in. Thanks. Bye.